News channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK.
Here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show, every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You're with GB News. Good evening, I'm Sam Francis. The headlines at 11. Millions of train passengers are set to pay more for their tickets from next year, with a hike in fares of nearly 5%. The Department of Transport has confirmed that regulated rail fares in England will rise from the 3rd of March, though train companies can still set their own ticket prices on unregulated fares. The increase is based on inflation, but is being capped by the government at 4.9%. Well, that news comes as rail passengers are facing more travel disruption as they try to get away for Christmas. There are long queues for cross-channel journeys and train cancellations across the country. In the capital, Paddington Station is closing for 4 days on Christmas Eve, and Heathrow is also set to be exceptionally busy. The airport's expecting more than 250,000 passengers over the Christmas break. A criminal investigation has been launched into the alleged abduction of Alex Batty. The teenager, who'd been missing for 6 years, returned to the UK last week after being found in France. He disappeared when he was just 11 years old. His mother, who wasn't his legal guardian, had taken him on a pre-arranged trip to Spain. Greater Manchester Police are investigating the case after they interviewed the 17-year-old. A British student who built a drone for the so-called Islamic State terror group has been jailed for life with a minimum term of 20 years. 27-year-old Mohammed Al-Bared used a 3D printer at his home in Coventry to make the device, designed to carry a bomb or chemical weapon. On sentencing, the judge described him as a manipulative individual and a committed extremist. He'd built the drone to cause horror and destruction. Police in Prague have confirmed that the gunman who killed 14 people at Charles University killed himself after being surrounded on a roof. Earlier, authorities released this body cam footage. Well, that footage shows officers at the scene as the gunman opened fire in corridors and classrooms. 12 people are still in a serious condition, we understand, and at least one is critical. Police, who are still trying to establish a motive, say the shooter may have also killed a man and his young daughter in a forest near the capital last week. Here in the UK, the use of force by West Midlands police officers in the course of their work has been underreported thousands of times. Police inspectors have estimated that 46,000 incidents were under-recorded for the year ending March 2022. There were serious concerns about how the force investigates crime, protects vulnerable people and manages offenders and suspects. The force was previously placed under special measures after they'd been ruled inadequate in 3 out of 8 policing areas. And the Christmas countdown to #1 is over as Wham have made the UK's chart history. Their single Last Christmas has been awarded the prestigious Christmas #1 title, and the hit songs reached the top spot 39 years after it was released in 1984, with more than 13 million of us streaming it over the past week. That's the latest from the GB newsroom. For more, we are across the UK on TV, digital, radio, and on our website. This is GB News.
Hello and welcome to Headliners, your first look at Saturday's newspapers. I'm Andrew Doyle. Joining me tonight are two people on Santa's naughty list, Stephen N. Allen and Cressida Wetton. How are you both? I thought you'd be dressed up in some sort of festive garb. None of it, though?
No.
No.
No, but also I don't think we're on a naughty list. I don't know what lists you're on, but
No, I'm meant to inform my neighbours which list I'm on, but that's
in
a
the
different
past.
thing, isn't it? Yeah, it's
I'm on a fair few lists on social media, but I didn't put myself on them. Other people did. Anyway, we won't go into that. Let's have a look at those front pages. For Saturday, the Daily Mail is leading with Charles to knight Archbishop Welby. The Telegraph has got Dyson. UK must focus on growth, not inflation. The Times are running with criminals snared by new face recognition cameras, sinister stuff. And The Guardian has Labour may curtail Green plan to avert Tory attacks. The Eye has UK's worst rail firms cancel 200 trains a day, but bosses still take a bonus. It's a story as old as time. Finally, the Daily Star. Are we nearly there yet? Lots of travel disruption over the festive period. Those were your front pages. All right, then, let's kick off with Saturday's front pages. We're going with The Guardian first, Steve.
They're going with Labour may curtail Green plan to avert Tory attacks. And I'm filing this one under poor old Keir Starmer can't do anything without it being wrong. So previously, on sitting here talking about the news, Keir Starmer, he never comes up with any policies. Why won't he just tell us a policy? They come up with a policy to tell us. This is the borrowing £28 billion to invest in green jobs.
Yes.
Well, that's a bit expensive. So then he comes up with the idea of, well, maybe we could change it around so I don't need to borrow that much. Oh, he's flip-flopping. The reason you think he's flip-flopping is because he told us a policy so far ahead.
Yes.
Financially, there's no way you'd really be able to know how much you could borrow on this one.
And he's flip-flopping because he senses that borrowing that much money for green jobs might not be a big vote winner.
Yeah, or at least the Tories would frame it as being expensive.
Yeah.
So he'll make it less expensive by borrowing less. But instead of them going, oh, well, it's less expensive, well done, now he's being accused of flip-flopping by agreeing with the... So the Tories either disagree with him for the amount or disagree with him for flip-flopping. There is no win.
Yeah, but Steve, the flip-flopping allegation isn't completely unfair. I mean, he has form on this, doesn't he?
Well, he had form for other things with flip-flop, but literally this is one where people have been saying, well, that's too expensive. Would you, for the love of something, flip-flop? He flip-flops. Yes. Oh, he's flip-flopping.
Yeah, so he's flip-flopping on demand now, which I suppose is a step up from just flip-flopping voluntarily.
That's being a politician, isn't it? What do you think about this? We don't like it. All right, we'll do that. Isn't that?
Yeah, but I don't like that. You see, I really do believe that maybe in 2024 we can get back to this idea that all the politicians just tell us what they think about things and what they want to do, irrespective of them trying to work out which would secure them more votes. And then the electorate, knowing what they would think, can vote for the candidate that best represents their own interests. Wouldn't that be a wonderful system?
You're arguing against... We're arguing against populism, which I think it's an interesting place to do that. But that's what he is doing. He's literally saying, I want to invest. OK, the number's not right. I'm changing the number. He's not saying, do you know what? forget green, we're doing pink jobs or something like that. He's not changing the policy.
What's wrong with pink jobs, Steve?
He's changing the number. Ask Keir Starmer. Why is he not investing 28 billion in pink jobs?
Exactly.
In fact, we probably could pressure him into it.
I don't know quite what that would be.
It's not a flip-flop. It's a change.
It's not. OK, I accept your point that it's not a flip-flop, but I stand by my view in that Keir Starmer is an inveterate flip-flopper.
Well, and this story is really just about repackaging the same idea, isn't it? They're just saying, well, we can't... I love this. Many Labour officials are irritated that they have to defend the £28 billion figure without being able to say what the money will be spent on. It's like, isn't that what we expect them to be able to do? That's not unreasonable.
OK, well, let's move on to The Times. Now, Cressida, you got this one.
The Times. Criminals snared by new face recognition cameras. We've been talking about this before, haven't we? This isn't a new idea, but this article is arguing that it's faster and I guess it's cheaper and more efficient to use these cameras than actual police people.
So this is the story that they've just developed the technology? Is that why this is suddenly front-page news?
Well, you know, most of the story at this stage. It says ministers are pushing for live facial recognition cameras to be used routinely in town centres. So I think that's the difference.
Yeah,
it's that they're going to be capturing all of us all the time. And if we are on a naughty list, then this will make it a lot quicker to solve the case.
Cressida, is it not the case that we're already pretty much being monitored all the time when we go into the town centre?
Because we all know that if we committed a crime, the first thing they do is go back and look at the footage of where had we been in the past 20 years.
OK, Steve, well, let me ask you, because I know someone who used to shoplift, you know, as a hobby, and he's got a lifetime ban from a certain high street store. And when they apprehended him eventually, they said to him that you'll have a lifetime ban, but also, if you ever enter any of our stores anywhere in the country, our computer software will detect your face and, you know, the shutters will come down, the SWAT team will come in.
Yeah.
Now, were they lying as a deterrent? Because it looks like they've now developed that technology.
Yeah, but whenever that sentence was said, surely it was a lie. If they've
that was about 10 years ago.
Yeah, and the news story today is that they want to use it in town centres.
OK,
so it was a TV detector van thing. That our shops can recognise your face.
Yeah, well, he never went back into any of those shops again, so it works.
It works, yeah.
But is it so bad? I mean, look, I do worry about this. I worry about being in a society where we're constantly being monitored by CCTV. I don't like it, but just in an instinctive level. Like, I kind of get also that if I was a victim of a crime, I'd want 1 million cameras on me all the time. But, you know, and also they say if you've got nothing to hide, you've got nothing to fear, right?
I mean, I don't want to worry you, but I think there are cameras in this room right now.
Are there?
So
you what?
You might have picked the wrong career.
I mean, that's chilling.
If you don't like being filmed.
I find that. I don't like being watched.
No, good. No. Well, not. Yeah, it can put your eye off, can't it? I agree with. I agree. You can read the whole thing, and there's no point that actually should trigger the bit where you think, oh, it's criminals being caught, and I should be OK with this. But I also don't like the idea of being watched, because it won't take long until the front page is, oh, we want to use it to catch people who park bad.
Well, that's it. And the fear is once all of this stuff is installed, we might have an unscrupulous future government that might just wants to watch people
We might have
other reasons
to hide now, but you don't know what you're going to want to hide.
No, exactly.
I might have something.
We don't know what will be considered illegal or subversive in later years. Anyway, it's all sounding very Soviet Union to me. Let's move on now to the front cover of Saturday's Daily Mail. Steve.
More outrage. Charles...
Good, can't get enough of that.
Charles to knight Archbishop Welby. Knighting a bishop seems... It's a chess move, isn't it? And somehow they've turned it into upset.
Is it an outrage story?
Well, it is, because in the actual story they just list all of the things that Welby said that he shouldn't have said, that he's getting involved with his opinions. And I found it quite easy to ignore his opinions, because you can. There's no law that says you have to listen to what the Archbishop
Look, religious people throughout history have never expressed opinions, so I think this is a major shift for Welby,
Yeah.
you know.
You know what I didn't know? It says here that he did the pre-marriage counselling for Harry and Meghan.
Yes.
How did that go? I'm amazed that Charles is so thrilled with it.
Isn't he the one who ran the rehearsal wedding, the one that then on Oprah, Meghan claimed they had to get married in secret, not realising it was just a rehearsal? Poor woman. I mean, I think that...
She's not going to know about rehearsals, is she? She's a... actor? All right,
actor and American, where they put more effort into the rehearsal wedding than the real one, as far as I can see. But no, I take your point, Steve. And in fact, even in the subtitle here, King honours man who crowned him despite his attacks on Tories.
Yeah.
What's that? How does that connect? I mean, the King isn't a member of the Tory party.
It's the Daily Mail point of view, and it's not just the Daily Mail. This idea of, oh, this person said a thing that I disagree with, therefore they should never be allowed to speak again.
Now, that's the only thing about it, Steve, which I would counter, is that the Archbishop has some political clout in this country. We have a system where we have bishops in the House of Lords. They are allocated seats, not elected. So there is that sort of odd fusion we have between church and state, represented by this man who is the Archbishop of Canterbury, after all. Now, in that sense, perhaps he has more of an obligation as a religious figure to step back, particularly when he described the Rwanda scheme as ungodly. He supported the Northern Irish Protocol. He's done various, worse than that. He's gone full in. He also said he was going to decolonise the Church of England after the BLM riots. Now, I would suggest, I'm just saying, we can agree or disagree with his opinion, and of course I think he's got a right to an opinion, but given his specific position as the head of the national church, one that is connected to our government, should he perhaps keep stum?
Well, whether or not he should or shouldn't, it's perfectly legitimate for the Daily Mail to have a pop at him, isn't it? Given what Andrew's just said, he's of interest to all of us.
But, you can argue against the points that he made, but why do you care that he's become a knight? His points aren't more impactful now that he's been knighted. No. It's not as if, when he was just the Archbishop, I was ignoring what he was saying, but Archbishop Sir Justin Welby, wait a minute.
And isn't it quite normal, actually, for people who reach that kind of status to be knighted anyway? It's not. I don't think he's being knighted for the political, or in spite of the political comments.
Personal services to the Crown. Don't watch it myself, but whatever he did.
No, well, he was a runner, I think. So good for him. It's a good show. OK, let's move on now to the Daily Star. Cressida.
The Daily Star. Are we nearly there yet? The country's in chaos. Nobody in Britain was in the least bit surprised yesterday.
They could have just reprinted this every year, couldn't they?
It's the travel story that we have at Christmas, but they're still making lots of money. Apparently fares have gone up 5.9%. I was in Paddington Station today, and every single person I saw had an enormous suitcase, and I thought, oh, I'm glad I'm not getting on that train.
Yes, but this is the problem. There is a kind of moral obligation, isn't there, to uproot your entire life during the festive season, to go back and stay with relatives who don't really like you. You know, it's just that you just have a bond of DNA.
You're sharing quite a lot of info there.
I'm not talking about look, I'm going to be here all Christmas, so don't worry about that.
You've solved it, yeah.
But no, I'm not talking about me, but I'm talking about a lot of the time. I hear a lot of friends of mine complaining about, I only go home to be patronised, and, to fight over the last turkey leg or whatever it is you carnivores eat.
There's a bizarre thing that happened. My folks aren't around anymore, but I used to basically revert to teenage me. Regardless of how old I was teenage me in that house.
Exactly. And it's a problem. It's Freudian. It's weird.
Yeah, it is weird. At least it's just one, couple of days a year.
Yes, fair enough. OK, well, maybe I'm being a bit of a Scrooge there. Well, look, that's the first part over and done with, but coming up, we're going to be talking about Rishi Sunak backtracking, old wounds re-emerging in Ireland, and asylum seekers wanting to return home for Christmas. Do not go anywhere.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
to find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel. Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners with me, Andrew Doyle. I'm still joined by comedians Steve N. Allen and Cressida Wetton. So we're going to start this section with Saturday's Mail. Rishi Sunak backtracking again, Steve.
Yeah, let me say more things that will annoy people. So it says Tory alarm as
That's
Rishi
why you're
Sunak.
here, Steve.
I know, I'm in one of those moods today as well. I've just supported Keir Starmer for ages just to wind people up. So let's see how we go with this one. Rishi Sunak watering down the biggest ever immigration curb that changed the amount of money that you'd require.
What, in terms of earnings?
In terms of earnings, to have a spouse come over here, and because that figure hadn't changed for a long while and then suddenly jumped up. It should have actually increased every single year. It's something they should have looked at.
Well, it was very low for a while, wasn't it?
It was 18 and a bit, 18.
It was what you get on a paper round, basically.
And you're supposed to be able to bring up kids on that.
Yeah, I know, that's ridiculous.
But it does mean, by having it set higher, that if you are young, because you tend to earn less, then you can't go abroad, meet someone, fall in love, and the government says, actually, no, you're not allowed that person. But the thing that I want to say that's annoying is, of course this is happening. They were trying to sneak it out without us getting all angry about it, because there are two things the government needs to do. One is keep having migration, because they're obsessed with GDP, and it increases GDP. And we're hooked on this 3% growth year on year. And unless you're actually going to do something long-term, if you curb migration, you'll get a reduction in GDP. No one wants to be that Prime Minister. So what they're doing is wanting migration, but they know that they have to look like they're tough on migration, so they come up with these policies to look tough,
well, again,
then fail, and they can blame it on lefty lawyers.
And this goes back to the point I was making earlier about politicians just not being open about their objectives.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a problem if they are... I mean, it would explain why the numbers have been soaring to the degree that they have. But haven't we reached a kind of tipping point where the electorate's patience is basically expired? You know, I mean, the numbers are so huge at this stage that I think people are just sick of it. Cressida, what do you think?
Absolutely. And this sort of feels a bit like net zero, doesn't it? In that they've said one thing and then it's like, oh, no, we're going to do it in phases. We're just going to back off a little bit. And
yes.
The other thing is, I mean, let's just think about the people that are actually... this is happening to. I mean, the suspense must be horrendous to not know.
Yeah, that's right.
Big chunks of money. You can't just suddenly increase your income by 10 grand or whatever.
No, I mean, it's a significant amount, isn't it, that you would have to get to do this? But it looks like a knee-jerk reaction. They are thinking they're going to have to do something about these numbers, and so they do something like this to look like, as you say, that they're having some sort of effect.
And you can look tough on this one without it impacting GDP as much, because all the other ones, students, you need people in care homes, you need nurses, you need spouses to someone who's over here, going to be less economically impactful. So you can attack them first. But even then, they're backing off of the numbers.
OK, well, let's move on to the Express now, Cressida. This is kind of surprising. Asylum seekers taking trips home for Christmas.
It's a little bit funny, isn't it? Asylum seekers stopped at airport trying to leave Britain and go home for the holidays. So these are people who are claiming that they can't go back to their country of origin because it wouldn't be safe. Who knows what would happen to them, but they can go back for a couple of weeks for a quick break. The only thing I would say is it doesn't give specific numbers in here. And so this Border Force guy, Phil Douglas, he's saying he's had lots of experience of this. But if you were him and it happened to you 3 times, you'd feel like it happened a lot, wouldn't you? And it doesn't actually say so. I'm not saying this is happening en masse, but it's very funny.
It is kind of brazen. I mean, so James Cleverly here is quoted here because he's claimed that, what did he say? Some people coming to the UK are economic migrants. Really? I think we know that by now, don't we? Now, the thing about this is, if you are an economic migrant masquerading as an asylum seeker and saying that you can't go home because it is either war-torn or you're in significant physical danger if you do so, and then you go home for a Christmas break, you're the worst fraud ever. I mean, that's just really bad fraudulent behaviour.
Although, as we all know, wars stop around Christmas for a quick game of football.
They do.
So as long as you visit during that bit, you're fine.
That's probably what's going on, actually. I completely take back everything I've said. I think that's totally reasonable. OK, so let's move on now to this story. This is the Daily Mail, and we've got a story about Ireland. Steve, you got this?
Yep, Suella Braverman hits out at Ireland's threatened legal action in relation to the Troubles and calls for the UK to leave the ECHR. I can simplify this for you.
OK.
So this is about Britain deciding that legally you can't take legal action against us because of the Troubles, whereas Ireland then thinks it's illegal that we've had the legal action about that and is going to take it to the ECHR to work out if it's legal. That clear it up for you?
Sort of clear. I mean, really, this is part of the Truth and Reconciliation programme, which is ongoing. It's been ongoing, really, since the Good Friday Agreement. You know, you had hundreds of members of paramilitary forces released under that. And they are now free. I mean, you hear ex-IRA members boasting about their terrorist activities because they know they cannot face any consequences for it. Now, the point here is that the UK, within this new act, has also said, well, there should be a kind of amnesty for members of the security forces. Now, Cressida, I kind of think what's annoying people here is the hypocrisy. Like, I think that's actually probably fair enough. If you're going to effectively say that people who've committed terrorist activity are not subject to claims even from families, even from victims' families, then, you know, maybe that has to be extended to all parties in the conflict.
I would say so. And also, it's a long time now, isn't it? It's 25 years, I think, this year. And I think, am I right in saying some of the people that are interested in this topic now wouldn't have even been around during the first conflict? It's that long ago, and I just...
Well, it's you know, it's all of these things. It is very horrible when you talk to people who lost people during the Troubles. I've done that many times. You know, from all sides of the conflict, you know, there is this sense of injustice. They see the killers of their family members free out on the streets. You know, they run into them in the local areas. Belfast and Derry are not big cities. You know, so when that happens, it's just a horrible thing to experience. If you take Bloody Sunday, of course relatives want justice. I mean, that was an outrageous murder, let's call it what it was. And just the idea that those people shouldn't be held accountable is just, it's like an extra knife in the heart, isn't it?
But if you let legal action go on forever, which it potentially could, then you prolong the problem that no one wants.
Isn't that what the government's trying to do then? Isn't the government effectively saying, you know, let's just try and draw a line under it, let's try and move on? And I don't know if this, by the Dublin government, is really going to help, is it?
Well, no, exactly. I don't know how you draw a line under it. What I'm saying is that I heard a podcast about this a few months ago, and they were talking about young men kind of joining this cause for something that people in their 20s might not have been involved in.
Yes.
But sort of wanting to join something, wanting to have a cause, wanting to belong to something historic, but not actually having lived through the scale of the violence and seen all these horrific things happening.
Yeah. You're right. It's a long time ago, maybe, but I come back to this point. I think it's the disproportionate element of this. I think so much of police time in Northern Ireland is spent on these backlogs of historic accusations against security forces, very little on Republican terrorists, say. Right. You know, very small amounts. So, you know, I think it's the disparity that's the problem. OK, anyway, let's move on to this next story. This is the Independent, a Labour MP in trouble for racism. What's this?
MP suspended for using racist slur, claims anti-racism course on expenses. So this is...
Wait, talk me through what happened here. We need a timeline here, Cressida.
He was...
This is Neil Coyle,
This is Neil Coyle, and I don't think I should read out the things he said, but it was... You know, we often hear things being said, and they're accused of racism, and was it, wasn't it? What he said was entirely inappropriate, and he admits that, and he was drunk at the time, and it was very naff language. So he did do it.
Yeah.
And he then got told to go on one of these courses, what is it called? Unconscious bias training.
Yes.
So he was sent on the course, and it cost about 300 quid, and he put it on his expenses.
That's so cheeky.
It's so cheeky. And what I find really interesting is that people are so outraged by this, but they're not talking about the fact that he didn't learn anything. They're saying things like, it looks like someone who's gone through the motions. There needs to be penance. You have to foot the bill for the penance. And they keep using these words like penance, and it's like... They're not saying, but did he come home a changed man?
Yeah, but you know why he didn't, Cressida? It's because unconscious bias training does not work. It's been debunked a million times. It's a completely useless waste of everyone's time. It is merely performative. You know, he's admitted that he said these slurs, these racist or at least a racially insensitive terminology when drunk. The way to do that is to acknowledge it and say, I'm sorry, not to go to some pointless performative course which does absolutely nothing.
I think it's also true to say, I know we can't read out what he said, but go and Google it and have a look, because there's no way he was unconscious of that bias.
No, exactly.
Say those words. He was very conscious of his bias.
Exactly. So actually, it's a double whammy. The course itself doesn't work, but it wasn't even unconscious.
Yeah.
No, you're right. I don't think it was at all.
300 quid to get rid of all your racist... I mean, think of all the difficult old uncles you could just clean up for 300. Brilliant.
But actually, isn't really the story here the gall of the man to charge the taxpayer for his own punishment?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it was, really. It wasn't really... No one thought that him going on this course would prevent him from ever doing this in the future. It was a punishment. It was a humiliation. It was a ritual. It was like going to one of those courses when you've gone over the speed limit.
I mean, I think it will stop him doing it again, but not for exactly the right reasons.
No, well, will it now? I mean, isn't he going to get punished for charging the taxpayer?
Later in the article, he actually says that he's glad it happened, in a sense, because it made him cut back on his drinking. He realised he had a problem. So he's changed, he's more conscious.
That's good.
It wasn't the course that did it.
No.
And he was probably, we were certainly paying for some of that alcohol anyway, because it was subsidised. So in many ways, we've earned some of the money back that we've had to pay as taxpayers for his punishment.
Well, thankfully, I never say anything embarrassing when I'm drunk. So I'm not worried about that. OK, let's move on to the next story. Oh, no, we haven't got time in this section, unfortunately. We'll move on. But coming up after the break, we're going to be talking about an MP declaring war on Mumsnet, priceless art being stolen, and apparently working 9 to 5 is overrated. Find out more about that in a moment.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you,
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Welcome back to Headliners, your first look at Saturday's newspapers. The Guardian now with a story about what is this, a food black market?
Yes, Britain's increasingly turning to food black market, experts say. So apparently meat, cheese and confectionery are among items being stolen in large quantities. And The Guardian is saying this is because of the cost of living crisis. It says retailers are reporting a record year for shoplifting, costing the industry £1 billion this year. Home Office data shows the crime has reached the highest level since records began, while the proportion of shoplifting incidents that result in a charge has fallen. I wonder if that's got anything to do with it as well.
Because it's a huge cost to the consumer as well, because they end up they're hiking the prices up across the board. I really hate shoplifters, can I just say? They are just my absolute bête noire.
I didn't realise how much I hated them until I used to go to there's a co-op in Hackney, because my missus used to live nearby, and I've been stood in there so many times. There was a lot of shoplifting. And the thing that really bothered me was how it took me longer to queue than it did for these shoplifters to get in and out of their stuff. Yeah. And no one would try and stop them. I'm like, I'm wasting my time queuing up to give you my beep at the end of this.
This is the other problem. People don't stop them. But I tell you, a couple of Christmases ago, I was at home. My mum were at the supermarket. There was a guy who had stacked up all these boxes of, like, wine, and he put a bottle of whiskey behind it in the trolley. And my mother just said, "Oh, you've missed that there," and he was gutted. And I thought, good for her.
It's called nesting, apparently.
What's that? Nesting? When
you put the cheap stuff, you put the nappies and the toilet roll around the scotch and say, "Oh, just beat that." Not that I've ever done it. I'm just.
You sound suspiciously knowledgeable about this.
Unusual friends. It's
just not moral.
No,
I don't care if you're ripping off a supermarket.
And apparently, it says here that you can neutralise the crime by buying stuff that fell off a lorry, no questions asked, like kind of. What was he called? Del Boy Trotter style. Apparently that makes people feel it's OK, so they'll knowingly... or is it just picking on the poor? I don't know.
I don't like it at all. Thou shalt not steal, somebody said once. Can't remember who it was. OK, let's move on now to the Daily Mail. Many want to join the army to see the world, but they end up in an office job.
Yeah, Army moves hundreds of troops to the from frontline to recruitment officers because the force is shrinking too quickly. So the idea is to deploy, instead of just getting actual specialised recruiters, to deploy frontline soldiers into the recruitment officers. I don't know if it's the idea is, you'll more likely sign up if there's someone there with a gun. I mean, it's not. The idea is that they just need more manpower to do it. If you look at the numbers, it is really bad. We're at an incredibly small armed force.
We are very small. But we're not going to attract more people to the army if it's an office job.
Yes.
People do join up for...
Although I think part of the problem is we don't believe that it's about seeing the world. I think actually now there are fewer people wanting to sign up because wars are actually happening.
Yeah.
There's been a big, long slice.
Not just that, but nobody's celebrating soldiers. I mean, wars were happening in other times, weren't they? And there's no... I mean, what's the point of being a soldier if you're not going to be a hero? Isn't that part of it?
I assume that's part of the allure.
I've never wanted to be a soldier, so I would have to ask people why they do it. But, I mean, isn't it... We don't have a culture of thank you for your service like they do in America.
Do we need to... Should we bring back conscription? What do you think, Steve?
No. Although I did hear an interesting thing about national service should be viewed as adult education because for all of the main thing it did was teach people to read. When the education system wasn't doing stuff, it was filling a gap. So it's less about, the Daily Mail would say, it's about discipline and giving a slap and all that. Actually, it was about furthering education.
But didn't they read because it was a disciplined environment? And we keep having stories about kids being excluded from school and not learning anything. And it sounds like what you're saying is they might learn more in a structured environment.
I think that's true, and there's lots of good arguments for conscription, not least that politicians won't sort of start illegal wars where they might put their own offspring in danger. But
this is the other problem with the army, that the posh people go in at a different place and never see any kind of threat. They just go around as officers, whereas it's the working class people who are lives that are risked someone else's...
Cannon fodder, they call them.
Yeah.
Yep, very sad. OK, let's move on to The Independent now. A Labour MP has declared war on Mumsnet. Cressida, this is quite a complicated story, this one.
Labour MP Dawn Butler vows to report Mumsnet to police in transphobia row. So...
You'll have to explain from the start because there's a few steps.
To this is the absolutely tragic murder of a teenager called Brianna Jai, who was a trans woman, trans girl, I should say. Now, when Dawn Butler spoke about this publicly, she implied that part of the motive for Brianna being murdered was the fact that she was trans.
Yes.
And it's pretty much proved now that that's not the case because the murderers had a list of potential suspects, the others weren't trans.
I mean, I have to say, reading some of the details of the court case, it's so disturbing. I mean, these were clearly very disturbed individuals, very kind of, they had psychopathic fantasies and they'd even said in their WhatsApp messages, if it wasn't Brianna, it would be someone else. I think it wasn't. You know, and actually the police had completely said, look, this isn't a transphobic attack, I think 48 hours after the murder itself. The worry is that people are weaponising it.
Well, this is it. So Mumsnet are complaining about the way Ms Butler has talked about this.
Yes, a number of commentators have effectively tried to blame gender-critical feminists for this murder, which strikes me as just morally repugnant and just really irresponsible. And for an elected MP to do it, I think is pretty grim. And then for her to claim that she's going to call the police on her critics, I mean, this is just out of control,
and they've said, go for it. You know, they said, we've got an active moderation team. It's like, it's Mumsnet. It is an active moderation team. Like, they have got the
Yeah, I know.
They're going to check on this.
I mean, Steve, I can't be the only one who feels squeamish when people weaponise this kind of tragic, horrific murder.
Indeed, and it actually should be allowed to be wrong and have the arguments online without then falling into this victim mentality of someone's disagreed with me, someone's called me out on being wrong, I'm going to call the police on the website. The website kind of does the same back, saying, oh, other people have said worse things on Twitter. Are we being picked on because we're mainly women? Did you have to play that card? It feels like everyone's going into their corner to see who's the biggest victim here, whereas actually the space to have the discussion is in the middle to work out what the truth is.
And let's not forget the real victim of this is Brianna. Absolutely horrific, horrible crime. OK, let's move on now to the Telegraph. Now, Banksy. Steve, I'm not a big Banksy fan.
All right.
And actually, this latest piece doesn't really, you know, inspire me, if I'm honest.
Good news, then, because it got nicked. So, this new Banksy installation, taken within an hour of its creation. So it's a stop sign with some aeroplanes on it, which are meant to be warplanes, and it's about stopping war,
yes.
I guess is the thing.
He's always been subtle.
Yeah.
As an artist.
It works on many levels. That one, anyway. And, yeah, someone went along and nicked it. And what I like about it is they went along, tried to get it off the wall, couldn't, disappeared, and a few minutes later came back with bolt cutters.
There's the picture, by the way, if you want to see.
It feels like that bloke from the ladder story recently, doesn't it? The guy's trying to get the flag down, and then one of them just pulled a ladder out of nowhere, an extra. Where have you got bolt cutters
Who's 2 minutes away from bolt cutters in their everyday life? The crowd apparently disagreed. They were shouting, stop. I imagine he was going, yeah, I can read. You just name in the thing I'm nicking.
I mean, you know, artistically, it's not very good. Maybe it was an art critic who was taking it down.
Maybe it was, or somebody that the cost of living crisis can't afford to go and buy art.
Yes.
Or an actual stop sign. You can't afford your own.
Yeah.
If you don't want your art to be nicked from the street, I don't know, put it in gallery.
Yeah, gallery.
Stop victim blaming. That's where Banksy has to work. That's what he is.
And the idea that the newspapers believe the interview where his name is Robbie. Of course it's not. It's a pun. Why are you falling for Robin Banks, Robbie Banks?
Of course that's a pun.
And they're all going, oh, no, his name's Robbie.
Steve, I despair as well.
I know.
OK, well, let's finish this section now with the Metro. 9 to 5, Cressida, give us a chorus.
Woman who said that 9 to 5 is crazy, loses her job. This is the woman. I don't know if you've all seen this lady's work. She's previously appeared on the internet crying, making some really good points, but can we all just agree we should have on-the-spot fines for people crying on social media right now?
Yeah.
She's making some good points. She talks about the fact that in a standard 9 to 5 job with travel and not being able to afford to live in the city and all the rest of it, that life's very difficult and you haven't got time to do all the things you'd like to do. But she does that while looking very attractive, crying and having these amazing nails that I think, well, that didn't take 5 minutes, did it? So she kind of undermines her own point. Anyway, she's now been fired.
But this is the thing about those kind of videos, you know, it's the idea that a young person goes into the world, actually gets a 9 to 5 job, realises they can't just stay in bed all day like they did at university. That's a pretty common experience. I think most of us have had that. But, of course, we didn't have smartphones to record our grief and put it out there. Of course, like you say, she was not doing that. She was getting clicks, wasn't she?
Well, I mean, some people have really been defending her. Connor Tomlinson that comes on this show, not this show, this channel a lot, he was talking about the fact that we haven't evolved for women to be around so many strange men and cities are very stressful. And I thought, well, yes, you know, I work with Lewis, I sort of get it, but I don't think we're that delicate. So I think she would have made a much better point if she'd been a bit bolder, but probably would have got fewer clicks.
Yeah, I mean, no, I mean, I've got nothing against her because I think she's part of that generation where you do emote online. It's considered quite fashionable. That's part of how you commodify yourself for public consumption, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, when I first started working and was exhausted and my nails were nowhere near as good, I just kept it to myself. But
Yes.
I do want to... I know I am turning into a grumpy old man, but thank heavens for Generation Z for making millennials bearable. For ages, they were the generation going, oh, they've lost the plot, and then Gen Z come along and cry about, I had to work from 9 to 5? And that's...
Yeah, but I think actually Gen Z, if we're going to call them that, they are, they're more polarised than the millennials. You know, the millennials were just sort of like standard, like just as a standard, were just kind of annoying and whingy. Whereas the Generation Z seemed to be either this extreme version of what the millennials were, or a kind of really reactionary kind of...
So they want 1950s dresses and stay at home.
Yeah, trad wife, kind of like... I mean, it's weird. They're just polarised as a generation. So, you know...
Maybe we've always been that weird, but we just couldn't get that video to people really
That's
quick.
it. I'm so relieved that I didn't grow up in the era of smartphones.
Can you imagine?
I'd be in prison. I'd be in prison by now, basically.
I would be so ashamed I couldn't leave the house.
No. OK. Well, that's all we've got time for in this section. But coming up, why you shouldn't make big announcements at Christmas, the Christmas #1, and why driving home for Christmas is killing the planet. See you in a moment.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests, and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners with me, Andrew Doyle. It's your first look at Saturday's newspapers. So we're going to kick this section off with the Telegraph now. A message for people who want to make big announcements this Christmas, Steve.
Yeah, Debrett's got some info for you. Engagement and pregnancy announcements on Christmas Day are inconsiderate. Good. I totally agree. Normally, you give me an etiquette story, and I think there's a lot of faff. Who cares which knife you use when eating, all that kind. I'm not into etiquette stuff. But the idea of having to tell a certain slice of society, oh, it's not all about you. And there's been an increase in the number of engagement rings bought, and the article says it's not just because people want to get engaged, that apparently that ring shot for social media looks better with all the tinsel and rubbish around it.
Oh.
What a horrible reason to get engaged. Oh, let's do it around Christmas, because that way we can have some baubles in the background of our Insta.
It's grim, but it's good. It's good to see Debrett's back in the news, you know, because that's the etiquette guide. I think people have forgotten about that, you know.
So you just want some rules, some.
It's nice that I didn't know Debrett's were still around, but it's great that they're sort of saying, you know, why don't they do a new updated version where they talk about all the things that annoy modern life? People playing music on the tube. Why don't we give a copy of Debrett's to those people who play music on the tube?
Oh,
yeah, that'll get you out.
It'll work.
Yeah.
Trust me.
That won't get you beaten up on the top deck of a bus.
No, I think it'll definitely work.
This young'un.
Don't you realise that this is against decorum, young man?
I have thought about giving out pairs of earphones on public. I mean, I haven't done it. Obviously, I'm a coward, but I would like to do that.
Well, it's just too dangerous. It's just too risky. I mean, when it comes, this is very much a story about stealing thunder, isn't it? You know, just don't ruin Christmas.
I don't think it's just about that.
No?
I think. Well, look, obviously, I'm not talking about me, but some people get a bit, you know, sentimental and melancholy around Christmas, don't they?
They
if
do.
you're going to feel alone at any time, it's a great time to pick. And maybe Ella Nunn, the journalist, thinks that you're rubbing it in people's faces.
You are rubbing it in people's faces. A lot of people are miserable at Christmas.
So cynical. Try and enjoy other people's good news. You know?
Well, the pregnancy, I suppose, is on topic.
Yeah, it is. That's true. That's true.
The nativity involves a bit of getting pregnant.
Yes, it does. Although that was Immaculate Conception, so.
Well, we can't all be perfect.
No. OK, right, let's move on to this next story now. This is The Times. Cressida, this is about gamers.
The video game that could mend your broken heart. This is bizarre. I've never heard of... I didn't know this was a thing, as they say. Apparently, there's loads of different dating simulators on the market. What?
Right.
I know we
That sounds
occasionally...
rude, doesn't it?
Well, it does. It does sound rude. We occasionally do stories about very advanced robots.
Yes.
But this is post very advanced. This is when you split up with somebody. It's some kind of video game that you play.
What, to get over your breakup?
Yes.
And it's called Thirsty Suitors. I mean, that sounds like a dodgy film, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. That sounds like it's not for children. So you're locked in this furious row with the characters with the jilted lover, and then somebody struggles to penetrate his massive ego, so summons her mother. Who? What? Why is the mother getting involved? Who subsequently flattens him with a giant slipper. I mean, so I don't know whether you're supposed to kind of feel that that's supposed to be you. I'm not sure.
Well, people are seeking closure at the end of a relationship, so maybe a breakup simulator is a good thing. I don't know. I'm trying to...
I like the fact that it's been given points for being an accurate depiction of relationships. A giant slipper, wielded by a summoned mother. I did things very differently back in the day to
It's a bit like Punch and Judy, isn't it? It's how they sort of do.
What is the best way to get over a relationship, then, Steve?
Get over it.
Oh, look at you stoic.
Exactly.
Yeah, tough love, yeah?
I don't think there's anything that particularly healthy in getting your emotional loose ends tied up in a computer game.
No.
Because then you'll need to go back to it. You'll end up having some emotional feelings for these characters. No, if you get dumped, you've got to get over getting dumped. Otherwise, the rest of your life is just pining over.
I think just don't fall in love to begin with. I think love is evil. OK, let's move on to the Metro. Merry Christmas. And this is a story about demonic forces at play in the UK government.
It is, actually. They stopped official investigations of UFOs, which have been now called UAPs, because we have to mess with things, because that doesn't help anyone at all. So these UFOs, they could have been looked into, but there was a belief at the time that the skies were basically the devil's domain, which is news to me. I thought it was lower, but all right. And therefore they were demons, so you don't want to look into them too much.
Steve, are you making this up?
No, this
sounds ridiculous.
Well, there's a new documentary which you'll very much enjoy. It's called UFOs versus God.
Right.
I can't wait to see who wins that one. Something that there's no evidence that it exists, but some people believe in it. Actually, no, OK, maybe it'll be a draw.
That sounds like a computer game.
But it's an actual documentary, because it did stop investigation. And I actually think, if your mind is so weak that someone's saying to you, don't do that, it might be a demon, you weren't the scientist to investigate this in the first place.
Cressida, any thoughts on demons and UFOs?
It made me think of Dr. Phil. He's religious, isn't he? He's a Christian, and he says, you do not reward bad behaviour. And they're sort of saying that, aren't they? They're saying, don't mess with it. You don't know what it is. Be cautious, but...
I think it's ridiculous. Let's move on to The Independent. This is a story about Last Christmas, which is a very popular Christmas song, finally gets to #1.
Finally. It's mission accomplished. Wham! Secure Christmas #1 with Last Christmas as Sam Ryder lands #2. Apparently it's taken 39 years for this...
So it never got to #1?
Never got to #1.
Right.
It was beaten.
By Do They Know It's Christmas?
Yes, it was, yeah, which I found astonishing because I personally much prefer the Wham song.
The Wham song is one of the better Christmas songs. I'm glad it beat Mariah Carey, who's always hovering around the #1 spot this time of year.
It's a great song.
It's not a great song. Oh, I find the sexualisation of the Santa Claus figure to be deeply inappropriate.
It's... What do you find...
Have you watched the video?
No, I listened to the song.
No, she's rolling around in a sexy Santa outfit.
She's being very direct about what she would like for Christmas.
Is it you?
Yes.
Yeah. No, she's wearing... No, she's rolling around with Santa in the snow. I mean, it's just grim. I think it's just...
Why haven't there been any... All these Christmas songs are all old ones. I think it's time for Lewis Schaefer
to release a Christmas song.
Croning, he'd love that.
I didn't realise. It's actually nice because I'd forgotten that in 2016 George Michael passed away on Christmas Day.
Yes, and...
That was technically his last Christmas.
And Andrew Ridgeley has said that he would have been absolutely delighted to be #1 finally with the song. So it's a nice story. Very quickly, has Chris Ray been cancelled for polluting the planet?
Everyone loves that Chris Rea song about going to visit your family at Christmas, Road to Hell. But also, driving home for Christmas, some joyless bunch of researchers have worked out how much carbon he could have saved by not driving. 18% of his carbon footprint. I think this is deliberately done to wind up the Daily Mail.
I think it must be, right?
Share it. And they've worked out all the different cars he could have used, and it would have been less carbon to go on the train, but also he would have not only not written the song, because he wrote it in the car.
Yes.
He also wouldn't have got home for Christmas due to strikes, you know.
Yes.
Probably something to do with...
If you're going to problematise a song about driving, go for I Drove All Night, the Roy Orbison one, where he not only drives all night to see you, he creeps in your room.
Yes.
And then Cyndi Lauper compounded the problem by covering it.
Oh,
outrageous.
You're absolutely right.
Any final thoughts on this, Cressida?
It's very miserable, isn't it? They probably know somebody that's just announced a pregnancy or a marriage. I don't know. She's very, very negative.
OK, well, the show's nearly over, so let's have another quick look at Saturday's front pages. So the Daily Mail is leading with the story of Justin Welby's knighthood. The Telegraph has a Dyson. UK must focus on growth, not inflation. The Times is running with criminals snared by new face recognition cameras. And The Guardian has a story about Labour curtailing their green plan to avert Tory attacks. The Eye has UK's worst rail firms cancel 200 trains a day, and the Daily Star has all of the travel commotion. Are we nearly there yet? That's all we've got time for, but thanks so much to my guests Steve N. Allen and Cressida Wetton. We're back tomorrow at 11 o'clock with some other people, and if you're watching at 5 a.m, please do not go anywhere, because now it's time for breakfast.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Evening, I'm Alex Deakin. This is your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Most places having another mild, cloudy and fairly windy day tomorrow. Particularly wet, though, across parts of Scotland, where there are warnings in place. A snow warning across Shetland already, but another snow and ice warning coming into play this evening over the northeast of Scotland. Some heavy snow here, making for some tricky driving conditions, particularly for tomorrow morning. Heavy rain then sets in across western Scotland. Elsewhere, it's just a generally cloudy night and a breezy night and a very mild night as well. But a wet start across Scotland tomorrow. Heavy rain in the west and some heavy snow for a time across the northeast, even down to lower levels for a time. So as I said, that could cause some issues. The rain lasts all day in the west. Could also cause some disruption. Patchy rain for southern and central Scotland, later for Northern Ireland and northern England, but a good part of England and Wales just dry and cloudy. Some brightness in the east, could see temperatures into the teens. It is mild, 11 or 12 Celsius, even where it's grey. Quite blustery on Christmas Eve. Gusty winds over northeast England and later northern Scotland mean we have Met Office yellow warnings in place and a warning for the rain across parts of Wales. That'll probably sink south through the day. Some brighter spells, but for many, Christmas Eve weather doesn't look brilliant. Again, though, it will be mild, with temperatures getting into the teens across parts of the east of England, where we see any sunny spells. Christmas, then, looking fairly mild but damp. There will be some colder weather across Scotland, where a bit of snow is possible on the big day across the north.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Carson, this Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests, and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news.